What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Brutal Planet Comics. I'm your host, Dre the Brute Daniels, and welcome to another episode of the Indie Corner, where I sit down and talk to everybody from the indie community. Writers, artists, directors, producers, doesn't matter if you're in the game, I want to talk to you. So today we have a guest coming from Michigan. So this is my first time talking to somebody from that state. He is the writer and author of We as Americans 2100 AD and is the CEO of Untitled Comics. This man's got a lot going on. Give it up for Sean P. Terry.
How you doing, Andre?
What is going on, my friend? How are you?
I got no complaints, man. I'm good.
Nice. Well, first of all, I want to thank you for making the time. I'm on the East Coast, so I'm about an hour or so ahead of you. So I want to thank you for taking the time to just come up on the show and talk about your craft.
Yeah, I'm East Coast too, bro. So we're on the same time.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Michigan splits like in one part or another, right, for the hour thing.
Chicago, I think, is anytime I go there, I lose an hour.
There it is. Excellent. Well, good. That's even better. So yeah. So once again, happy to have you. So let's just talk a little bit about who you are, where you're from. Let's just talk about you, your journey. How did we get here?
So I've been Detroit area my whole life. When I grew up, it wasn't nothing to live in Detroit and to be around just people of every color. Like as far as growing up goes, I've done the suburbs in my later years. I've gone back to Detroit, so I've always been friends with all different kinds of people, and so that as a writer really fueled me because I got to have dialogues with everybody. I got to kind of understand everybody's journey, everybody's tale. I've been, the kid at school to where it's like there's one white kid in the class. I've also done it to where there's been one black kid in the class. Either way, everybody's been my friend, and I think it's just helped me connect with people. So that's kind of me growing up. And as far as getting here doing comics, I always loved comics. Basically my whole life, I'd be reading the graphic novels, and probably really around 16 and late teens, early 20s is when I'm graphic novel in it. So that's when I'm checking out like Preacher and Sandman and anything by Alan Moore and Warren Ellis and all that stuff. And so a lot of those guys, I looked at what they did, and that just left a mark on me. So the kind of stories that they would create, the kind of art that was in those stories, I think that became my path. And so as I said, I want to do this. Those are the kinds of stories I wrote and the kinds of art that, or artists I should say, that I wanted to pursue. So.
That's excellent. That's excellent to see. And I thank you for sharing your experience with on both sides of the spectrum, being the only white kid or being the only black kid. I'm from Washington, D.C., so it used to be known as the Chocolate City, so I didn't see a whole lot of white folks coming up. So it was so my experience is basically curtailed to the black experience or the colored experience, whatever word they want to throw around. And that it should influence everyone's writing or somebody's passion from where you come from, where your origins are, what you experienced, maybe something you didn't experience. So that's definitely pretty dope. I like that. And in finding inspiration from classic writers, and that's everybody is on that come up. You gotta love our classics. You gotta love a lot. Like I was inspired by a writer named Sean Mckeever. He wrote he did a couple of Spider-Man runs back in the day, but he made this series which was one of my favorite series of all time, which is really underrated, called Sentinel, which was basically about a downed Sentinel from like the X-Men that was then repurposed to be like a kid's best friend. It was pretty cool, and it really stuck with me, and I talk about it all the time. I rave about it. It's great. So yeah, but thank you for that. So let's talk about how you got into the comic industry itself. So we got your passions lined up. We got your history. How did you get into the business?
So I think, just being like a late teen, I first started to write comics and scripts. The Bar actually is a series I'm doing now. And that started as short stories. So, I mean, that to me, I kind of imagine that as maybe like a 50-story novel that I could easily adapt to comic, right? So I'd have 50 comics from that. So that could potentially go for a very long time and be a long series. But Back in the day, MySpace was the place to go before there
True.
was Facebook. So I'm one of those old heads that started with MySpace and met artists there. A lot of people know like Zach Dolan, like Unlikely Hero Studios.
Yep.
That dude, great dude. He passed away, but
Yeah.
I probably knew him before anybody, like before a lot of people anyway. And he was there's thumbs that exist like for the bar that he drew. That was once upon a time, and so I think that I started to get going with some of that stuff, but. Everything happens in life. For me, I had a kid on the way, and I'd spent some money trying to do the comic thing and only doing it through publishers because you couldn't do Kickstarter and stuff back then. Kind of ran out of time, ran out of money. It's like, I gotta get where I gotta get as far as family goes. Make sure that's number one. Come back to comic, when you can do it. So I think my journey started earlier, and then in the last few years, I just done my best to connect with every artist and creator that I can. I have huge respect for Kickstarter and the indie community. And then, so for me, I founded Intelligent based upon just wanting to get like-minded people who do quality work, quality art, and get those stories out there. And so I think that probably from 2019 to 20, we made about 10 books,
Ooh.
Which is, for being indie, like that's some insanity there. It took a pause when COVID came, just because so many reasons. Like I started the actual campaign for the bar, and 2 days later they're talking about the state's going to be shut down for weeks, and that means the printers. And I'm somebody that if somebody says, hey, I'm going to deliver this in 6 months, fine, they're doing what they advertised. But by and large, mine have been pretty well ready to go. So by the time if a campaign ends in October, you're holding it in November, or as quick as you reasonably can. So for that reason, for many other, wanting cons to be open again and kind of go that route, I said, what, I'm going to wait till we're in a little bit better place COVID-wise and get right back to it. So.
And Sean, everything you said, I agree with 110%. Especially with the, well, first of all, before I even get to that, y'all dropping that many in a year, that's a lot of issues, man. I mean, that is, whoo. I mean, like in the last year, I think I've produced, I'd say 29 to 20. I won't count 2021. Not 2019 and 2020. I think I've produced 4 in that time. Y'all dropping double digits. Y'all are cooking with grease, man. That's crazy. That's what's up, man. But I love to see the grind. The grind never ends. But what you said about COVID putting a stop to everything in the comic industry, it hit me really hard right when it began, because that summer of 2020, I had 4 appearances lined up in different comic shops. 4 appearances lined up to promote my new issues and sell my old ones and all that stuff. I was doing signings in 4 different locations. All of them canceled immediately. And I was like, ugh. I'm like, bro, I got a whole box full of stuff back here. I got a box full of stuff. What am I gonna do with all these paperbacks? What am I gonna do with them? It was to say that it took a toll is an understatement of the millennium. And like you said, the same thing with the cons. I personally, I agree with you. Until things like blow over, until this stuff is done with, I'm not really cool with going to and setting up a booth and all. I'm just not feeling it right now. So I'm with you. I'm with you on that. But with that in mind, how have you been able to supplement like your income in regards to that? Since there are no cons, since you're not doing the cons, since you're not doing the appearances, like, are you doing print on demand? Like what is Intelligent Comics doing for that right now?
So, I think for us, the goal was to just produce a lot of stuff and kind of come out of nowhere. So, I mean, we had a better part of like 4 issue ones, which this is the 3rd that's dropping. So there's another one, like a horror series that's yet to be kickstarted or come out. And we got a couple, like we'll talk later, I guess, about 2100 AD. But, we're art-wise up to about issue 5 on that.
Oh, wow.
So we, and only the first 2 have dropped. Like volume 1 was issue 1, issue 2, volume 2, issue 3, issue 4. So, I think we just held off because if you're making stuff faster than you can release it, and due to COVID, and the goal was to get to graphic novels and to do the cons and stuff. But luckily, comics for a lot of us indie people, it's not giving us the income as it's taken away.
Never has.
So pausing and waiting for a sunnier day is not the worst thing at the end of the day. I guess that's best how I answer that one.
Oh no, I'm with you 110%. You always put in more than you get out,
Right.
but that's part of the grind, baby. That's part of it, But you're right, and I agree with you 110%. That's exactly how things work. So great, thank you for sharing everything about Intelligent. Sound like you got yourself a really strong crew. That's awesome. Pumping out 10 in a year. That's crazy. Yeah, y'all got something going over there. So let's talk a little bit about your past projects. Let's talk about We as Americans and 2100 AD. Tell me a little bit about these projects, how they got started, and what their stories are and stuff.
So We as Americans, I originally thought, like, you see X-Men, you see Avengers. I thought, what if in real life people did have powers, and maybe they can't fly, but maybe they could read somebody's thoughts, right? Or maybe they can move a beer bottle with telekinesis, like nothing crazy, right? So my first thought was, how would all these people meet? If you got one in Portland, Oregon, and one in Canada, how do those two ever meet, find out about each other, know about each other? And I think the answer to that kind of created the lead character, the genius character, because you probably need like a benefactor, like a Tony Stark, like a millionaire, a billionaire, somebody who was recruiting or bringing these people together. So I think that's, if you really wanted to have a super team, how would they meet, and then what would they do? And so if they brought together, then what's the purpose that they brought together for? And so it's funny to think about it, but money is probably more prevalent than heroics.
Ain't that the truth?
So if you want to pay somebody to do something, you might appease them by letting them think that they're doing something heroic, or they're helping a cause. But if the zeros are big enough on the check, there's enough of them, right? Then so that was kind of like the germ for that. And then the pride of We as Americans is that part of the reason it's called We as Americans is because it touches on every voice. So we see different places. We go to Virginia, we go to LA. A lot of the stories told through dialogue. So it might be one of the main characters is doing something, and you're watching him do it sequentially in the panels, but he's also listening to a podcast. And you might have like warring voices, right? Like you always hear stupid shit in the media, right? You hear like there's a war on Christmas and like all kinds of dumb stuff, So I have a lot of fun and comedy and humor in there as well, just playing on those themes while building a bigger story and overarching. And I first wrote it kind of like as my answer to Watchmen, because you know how Watchmen was kind of like really 80s themed, and there was the real threat of like nuclear terror and that kind of a thing. Well, at the time I first thought of this, like the Iraq War, the Bush presidency, it was coming to a close. And so there was so many themes about people not raising questions and not being responsible with power. And so I wanted to play in a lot of those dynamics. So I think issue 1 is a good introduction and setup for all that. But, that's designed to run 12 issues and to make a lot of statements. So I'll be very happy to continue with that one.
Wow. I mean, I like that. And I love the idea that it's reflecting a time period that you lived through.
Right.
And that many people, especially during that Bush era, can relate to the idea of misinformation, or the idea of terrorism, and how the media either says accurately or inaccurately. I think it's a really good foundation for that anybody from any walk of life can really appreciate and enjoy.
The crazy thing is that some of because I completed all 12 of the issues. I just, haven't done the art and everything for it. And I completed them many, many years ago, really. And it's funny because it's one of those things, as a writer, you're always better than you were last year or 5 years ago. So, something that might have come out when you're 20, if it comes out when you're 25, it's better. If it comes out when you're 30, it's even better, right?
Yep.
So the funny thing about that is I got to have current, I guess, current news, current media, everything that's happened in like the last, say, 5 years. It's made a lot of the predictions in We as Americans come true, and it's like become even more relevant because at the time, things that you're hinting at, now they happen.
Yeah.
So it's actually funny because if somebody reads it today, they'll be like, oh, he's referencing that thing that happened a year ago. Like, nah, I probably predicted that thing 6 years ago, So it's got
it always feels good to be a prophet here and there, eh?
Right.
But that's cool, and I like the idea. I like the foundation where it comes from. And so how many issues for We Are Americans has been produced? I know you've written them all, as most writers do. Like myself, I've written all mine out. But how many have been produced thus far?
We produced one. That series, I definitely need to find the right audience or the right publisher for it.
Okay.
I think you had that one image with Versace Jackson. He's probably one of the top main characters, if not the top, maybe the top two to top three. And that was drawn by Ed Benz. Everybody knows Ed Benz from DC and Batman.
Yeah.
And Ed Benz is a superstar. He's a legend. And so he actually drew that cover. Edgar Salazar's, who did the interior art, he's done X-Men for Marvel. He's a big name too. So due to the high quality art there, due to the production cost on that, it's something to where I think when the following is behind it, we're going to produce all 12 of the issues. But that's something too, is you got to spread the word on it.
Okay.
That's a good reason for like an interview and stuff like this today too, because the bigger any of us indie people get as far as our followings and the people that are looking out for our stuff, the easier it becomes to produce. Whether you, me, any of us were to drop 2 projects in a year or 6 or 8, it's all about is the turnout going to be there for it, right?
Agreed. Agreed. Thank you, Sean. Thank you for sharing. And everything you're saying, I bow to that. Absolutely. That is tremendous. Absolutely correct. So tell me a little bit about 2100 AD, because I saw a couple of images. I was like, anything that's apocalyptic, I'm already all in. So tell us about that one.
Well, I think for me, I always want to tell different kinds of stories. To whereas we as Americans might be more, some of it might be political satire, some of it might be more action superhero-esque and comedy. 2100 AD, like you say, dystopian, future, apocalyptic, right? And then some other things I do might be horror, right? So 2100 AD, I think for a lot of people, they're just into that stuff. You don't think a lot about it, but if you say I like Matrix and I like Terminator, those are the same exact things. There's no difference.
Absolutely.
AI has taken over the world. The only difference between those two works is the execution, right? They went in a different direction with it. So, and then introduce 2100 AD. That's the same type of story there too, but again, it's in a different direction. So I think in Terminator, when the AI takes over the world, it's building bodies for itself and robots that are, skeletons. And but when you think about it, and if it happens in 50 years from now, 100 years from now, would the AI need to build bodies for itself? I mean, given that you can probably hijack any technological interface like a self-driving car and just make it crash, or airplane, or you got machine guns on the airplane, you can crash it into so. My thought there was kind of like, if this really happened, if AI really decided it was going to take over the world, how would that look? And so I think part of the germ for 2100 AD was, how could I do that similar story, that similar theme that we all know, but in different directions and ways it's never been done. And when you start to think about like how small drones are now and what they're capable of, and them getting taken over, I'm just trying to look at it from all the different directions. So, and the other thing, it opens pretty early in the first issue, like maybe around the 10th, 11th page, that it attacks the water supply.
Ooh.
Why do you even need to shoot a human with a machine gun? Like, you don't need to do that. If you poison the water supply, billions are dead. So all those kinds of elements, coming from different directions that you haven't seen. So I think there's great appeal in 2100 AD for that reason. That's designed to run about 10 issues, like I said. We're producing the better part of 5, and we'll get to graphic novel probably, hopefully, some point next year. And the other thing is, there's kind of a love story in that.
Okay.
The lead, male and female, they're younger. It's kind of her dad, who's kind of like one of the leaders, I guess, of the rebellion, or whatever you might want to call it. I would call it the humans that are still alive. A lot of them kind of bonded or banded with each other that, had an idea of how they might defeat the AI, or what's going on, or how to survive. Because in any post-apocalyptic setting, you're always going to get like a band of survivors, and you end up with what's left of the world. You might have like her father, Lita's father is JP. He's like a military guy. He's like a Green Beret for 20 years, right? Nice. So he's got kind of that. I sent you a couple images. I don't know if you have them, but he's kind of like the the Schwarzenegger of the group, like the tough man of action, right? Like he's African American male and very protective of his daughter. And Morgan is the love interest for his daughter, and so you got kind of that dynamic happening there.
Got it.
But I don't think he's the protective type, because when you think about it, in an apocalypse, you got a lot more to worry about than what your daughter's doing, right?
Absolutely.
And then you have like certain scientist technology types. So I mean, I just have a lot of fun with that series, and there's so much to do. It's like you want to give the viewer, the reader, a good impression. You don't want to give too much away. That I would say just read. It's pretty easy going. It's well thought out, and it's easy to pick up and like.
Excellent. That all sounds great, and fans of post-apocalyptic, they'll jump on it immediately. That sounds like a lot of fun. Anytime the world's ending, everybody's intrigued. So absolutely, that sounds like a whole lot of fun. And yeah, everybody go check that out. That just sounds amazing. So let's get to the main event of WrestleMania here. Let's talk about the bar. All right, just tell us where this idea came from. I'll share my experience with it in a hot second, but I just want you to tell me where the idea and passion for this story came from.
So, honestly, not to sound cliche or like something made up, but I was just walking down dark alleys in Detroit at night, and the things you would see, not very far from my house, and by not very far, I mean basically on my street and on the next main road, lots of prostitution, lots of things happening, especially at night and 1 and 2 a.m. and people getting dropped off and picked up. And that's where I lived. That's where I lived when I was 16 and 17. I lived in that city. I had that experience, and also I'd grown up like watching and being a fan of Law and Order and Tales from the Crypt, and a lot of those things. So the bar is kind of a combination of those things, maybe with a little bit of Black Mirror too, because when you think about a lot of these things, like Law and Order, for instance, you always had like the same detectives for years at a time, or the same prosecutor. What changes is that there's a new person each episode. There's somebody that had something happen to them, or somebody that did something wrong. And then that ends up being the focus of the episode. That's the same thing with the bar. Every new issue is a new person coming in there. Something has happened. It doesn't matter. It could be a prostitute. It could be a murderer. It could be anyone from any walk of life with some kind of a story to tell or something that's happened. So the bar kind of has like an intrigue to it, like a mystical element that pulls you into it. Like you see it if you meant to see it. It's said in the narration that perhaps it exists in one of the big city's dark places. Perhaps it exists in the mall, right? And the reason for that is because I think you could be walking in Chicago and you can see the bar. I think you could be walking in Atlanta and see the bar. So I think the people that see that are meant to do it. And then I always appreciated like how Law and Order, it wasn't really about like the detectives or the main characters. You'd learn a little bit more about them as you went, but mainly the focus was on the start of the episode. So same thing with the bartender. There's a whole story to the bartender. He is there. He's the one constant. The bar and the bartender are the constant. What changes every issue is who happens to walk in. And so, typically if you're drinking, you're talking too much anyway.
True.
But when you add in the fact that, the bar has that mystical element, so you can flash back to a tale from, anyone's past or something that just happened to them or something they're about to do, anything. You could tell any kind of a story. And what I love about that is it gives me freedom. Are you a Neil Gaiman fan or not really?
No, not really.
I'd advise to check out Sandman, and here's why. He created all these characters that were timeless, called the Endless. So they were here at the beginning of the universe. They'll be here at the end of the universe. And he said the reason he did that was because if he has that setting, he can go anywhere in the galaxy, through any time in the galaxy, and tell a story about these characters. So I believe I read that in an interview, and that was part of the germ for the bar too, is because if I create the right setting or the right backdrop, I can do the same thing, right? I can tell any story, provided they're all like horror themed and they fit, the theme and the narrative of the bar, because it's always about kind of like the dregs of society, right? It's a tale of revenge or betrayal, or something has happened. There's some tale of pain or compassion or horror, redemption. There's something to learn there. And so that's a thing too, is sometimes the bar can be violent, never for the case of like a shock value. It's always like a learning experience, like, wow, that's what that looks like, or that's when I do this, or when somebody does that to somebody, that's how that makes them feel, or that's what that is. So that's the main point of the bar too.
Wow. And first of all, that synopsis is brilliant. First and foremost, um, my feelings when I checked out the bar, I got the feeling of a reverse version of High Plains Drifter. I don't know if you ever seen that movie with Clint Eastwood. You know, it's like 1,000 years ago. But Clint Eastwood, it was a western, and a High Plains Drifter is basically the loner that walks into the saloon, and everybody, who's this new guy? That whole bit. But it felt like it was a reverse of that, and I got that High Plains Drifter feel from the bartender. How the bartender is this not new force, but that constant, like you mentioned. But that constant is such a powerful magnet that he attracts all the attention. And that's what I kind of got from it. Like when I read the issue and seeing how the main young lady, how she was immediately comfortable enough to start her conversation after, of course, a few libations, and his responses to it, of when she was expressing her pain and her anguish and her situation, how he wasn't overly emotional, he wasn't nonchalant. He was that perfect balance of like logistical and at the same time a helping hand. It didn't feel like it was leaning too far to the left or to the right. And I immediately just thought of a High Plains Drifter for some reason. But it worked so well. And of course the payoff was amazing and it was great. And how this, and like the ending, like the ending panels is what got me exactly what you were just expressing. How this is going to be episodical. How it's just going to be the next person that rolls up in the bar and then they're going to tell their story. And I'm just like, yo, this is tight knit writing. And this is stuff that I really, really appreciate. And I love everything about what the bar is. And the Kickstarter is live now, right? The Kickstarter is live.
Yeah,
right?
I launched it within the last few days.
Okay.
It's a shorter one. I think I only did like a 20-day one.
Okay, cool beans. So everybody, I'm going to leave a link in the description section below. Go support the bar. I'm telling you, this series is worth the time. And I was thoroughly impressed. And with the allotted time that I had to read it, I didn't even have to read it more than once. I was like, I get it. I got it. Check out this Kickstarter. Support all of Intelligence work. They're doing great. They're doing the Lord's work. Check out all their stuff. But the bar, I think, is going to be something that is going to be red hot in the streets. I really think so. Like this is something that I think everybody, especially with today's climate, with how people's thoughts and minds and feelings about a lot of these issues that's happening in our world today, this is a series to check out. Good gravy. Check out that for sure. But
I
have
so much to say to that. Because that's such massive praise, and now I wish I had time to send you 2100 AD. No, but addressing what you said for real, you had the exact reaction that I would want anybody to have reading that, and everything you hit is spot on. Where you say that the bartender is not tipping the scales, and even without being at the forefront, he's in the center of it, right? Like even if he plays the supporting role, it's kind of like if you're a man of few words and you're not giving too much away, you hold the intrigue, And so, are you a wrestling fan?
I am.
I heard Hulk Hogan say once, how he had that big old match with Warrior, right?
Of course.
Like one of the defining matches of his career. So even though Warrior was in the ring celebrating, he purposely, while he's on that little cart going down the aisle, all the fans are looking at him. So Warrior won. He's the main star. But because of how he played it and how he's reacting, everybody's eyes are on him. So he is still the man, and he still leaves the man. And he did that obviously because wrestling is a whole different topic. We talk more about it another day, but you always want to protect yourself, protect your image or whatever. So that kind of dynamic is always going to exist for the bartender. In every issue, you know, you're going to be watching him. You're going to be wondering, you know, what's he thinking? What role is he playing in this? And sometimes he's going to play a more active role, sometimes a less one. Sometimes he's, you know, I think there to listen. But you know, end of the day, you know, to whereas, you know how Tales from the Crypt, I had mentioned that comparison. Here's where that applies. Tales from the Crypt, it's almost like all those stories end in a poetic justice. You know, it might be some pedophilic priest that ends with getting, you know, castrated or something, right?
Yeah,
there's always just some kind of crazy. Yeah. So that's the bar too, though. I think this first story, you know, you had somebody who was a victim. So, you know, her story ends however it might end as a result of that. But I think in later stories, you know, we might be dealing with perpetrators, and we might really get to see that kind of karma, that kind of poetic justice play. And so, you know, when you say about that series, a lot of people will connect with it. I would think so, because it's kind of plug and play with a Netflix experience or something, in the sense of, you know, everything that's episodic like that. Black Mirror is a good comparison too, because it might have that twist ending, and you might not know what's going to happen or see it coming. So that kind of stuff is very popular, and with the art, with the storytelling, it's just made to be as cinematic as possible.
And it feels that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's tremendous, man. Thank you, Sean. My goodness. This, I'll be honest. Sometimes I'm a hard man to impress. I won't lie to you. I'm a hard man to impress, as most other writers are. But good grief, your writing has impressed me, and I can't wait to see what else you and your crew comes up with next. It is really good. It is really, really good. But yeah. I mean, man, good grief. I was really intrigued. I was up to 2-3 o'clock in the morning. I was like, what the devil did I just look at? I was like, what the heck just happened? Where am I? Is this reality? What is happening? But yeah. So, Sean, I want to thank you for coming on the show. I want to thank you for sharing about We as Americans, 2100 AD, and definitely the bar. For everybody watching, all the links to everything that Sean and Intelligent Comics is working on will be in the description section below. Go and support their stuff. They know what they're doing. They're great writers and artists. Yo, support the indies. I couldn't be more impressed with these folks. Sean, is there anything else you'd like to tell the masses?
Yep, I may have to have you write the foreword to the bar. It's a graphic novel, because nobody's done as good a job with it as you. Although I'd say you're probably one of the only people that's read it. So there's that too, because you know it's really not out yet. So there's that, right? So
True.
I just want to thank you for your time. I think you do a great show. Be happy to come back in the future, and wish you all the success and luck in the world.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So anyway, everybody, this has been the Indie Corner. I am Dre DeBrew Daniels. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and follow me on all those dope social media platforms that you see right beneath my face. They're right there. Click on them. But until then, I will catch you all next time. Also, if you want to support my channel, check out spinwiz.com or download the Spinwiz app and check out my comic series, Trouble. It was written with a lot of love, and it was definitely my favorite comic series to write. I've also written it in English and in Spanish, so whatever floats your boat, I got it for you. Thanks again, and check it out.